Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in and joining me for this latest episode from the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. I hope you have something to take notes with for this topic. At minimum, I hope you listen to this episode more than once. We are going to be diving into the world of ADD and ADHD, but we're going to be talking about it in two ways, not only the experience of the children that we are working with, but also what about when it's the clinician or the therapist? So as I'm saying this, it might be you, listener, as I'm saying this, who also has ADD, ADHD, or identifies in some way as neurodivergent. So we'll expand that out. And I have with me a very special guest. So let me go ahead and introduce everyone to Tony Vallance, all the way from Australia. So hi, Tony. Thank you so much.
G'day, mate.
So
Hello, Lisa.
hi there. Let me share with everyone just a little bit about you, and then let's just jump into this just really important conversation. So you specialize in supporting neurodivergent children and teenagers, particularly those with autism and ADHD. Your own ADHD diagnosis, which we're going to get into and talk about, fuels your authentic, highly creative approach. We're going to talk about what that looks like. I hope we talk about ADD and ADHD as a gift and a superpower. I'm going to go ahead and plant that seed in there if we can scratch the surface of that a little bit. But you empower also fathers with emotional resilience and healthier parenting strategies, drawing from both expertise, because you're a dad, and lived experience as a dad to neurodivergent kids. I'm just super grateful that you're here to help us understand this just a little bit more, because we both know it's super misunderstood. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it too. Yeah. Your
Yeah.
gratitude is mirrored from across the world. Yay.
Yeah. Oh, and I should probably even just mention, so you're in Melbourne, and Better Brains, is that the name of the
Yeah, Building Better Brains. Yes.
Building Better Brains? Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
just already go ahead and put that out there. Your practice and your work is connected to your to the Better Brains Building Better Brains Clinic. Building Better Brains. It's 3 B's in a row.
That's right. We're all about alliteration down here in Melbourne. Buildingbetterbrains.com.au.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we my wife and I set the clinic up. She became a play therapist before me, and it is with no regret that I say she dragged me into it, and I retrained from being a high school teacher for 15 years. During the lockdowns, working as a counselor, so retrained, and then on top of sort of post grad, worked and trained as a play therapist, and so I've been doing that for 3 years now at a little clinic that's grown from her and I to now 15 staff. Yeah.
This is your specialization, so thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just start with I've heard many people talk about ADD and ADHD in different ways, and I'm just so curious how you talk about it and how you define it, describe it. Let's just start there.
Yeah, totally. What comes to mind, and this may sound pretty bleak, is it's a world ender. There are so many kids I've seen teaching and in consulting and working and supporting to educate teachers now with ADHD who, are the outcasts and the noisy ones, and, sitting outside coordinators, just in that sort of internalized spiral of I'm a nothing. I can't do this. I can't focus. I can't, so on and so forth. And so, in terms of how education acknowledges and supports these kids, there's a long way to go. But there's so many beautiful teachers out there who are doing their absolute best to support these kids, despite those challenges. So ADHD comes in a lot of different ways. Even though some years back it was changed from ADD to ADHD. Which is a bit weird because many people, including one of my sons, has the inattentive variant of instead of the hyperactivity disorder. I'm the classic poster child. All my school reports growing up are, because I grew up in New Zealand, so it's like, Tony needs to learn to focus better in class, and stop distracting the other children.
Mm,
These kind of things. But for predominantly females and some males, the inattentive is very hard to spot. And often it's just inability to hold focus for any period of time. ADHD is comorbid in about an estimated 95% plus of cases with rejection sensitivity or rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is ultimately your internal working model of self is permanently stuck on the negative.
mm,
Um, you know, I'm terrible, I'm crap, I'm no good, I can't do anything right, all these kind of things. So we tend to, like many of us do, deflect many compliments or achievements. And when all said and done at the end of the day, we're sitting there at the end of the night trying to get to sleep, often tired but wired, with our brains going, going, oh, that's because I'm terrible, and really hyper focusing on the negatives and reinforcing, those really negative perceptions of self. So it's a challenging one when it comes to, because I work in a very strengths-based way, obviously lived experience with my late diagnosis of ADHD myself only 3 years ago. Um, despite everyone going, oh, sorry, Tony, I thought you always were diagnosed with ADHD. Oops. Everyone knew but me. Um, anyway, yeah, working with that can be hard because we work in a strengths-based way and celebrate the creative approaches and celebrate and try and channel in positive ways the kinetic approaches, or even for those that are in the inattentive ADHD, ways for them to find confidence and learn some more focus and from areas of passion and strength and build from that on top of that. When we call it a superpower, it's really hard because yeah, I understand where that comes from, but the problem is with pretty much everybody having RSD. When someone says to me, "My dude, it's a superpower," and I'm like, "Geez, I can't even do that
mm,
right."
mm,
Wow. And so instantly it creates this real conflict. So I think we need to be, it's well intentioned. I completely understand it. But for a lot of our kids, it can be quite dismissive, and for our teens and for adults, and even for myself, because it's like if it was something more overtly visible, for example, you're eh, trying to walk down the CBD to get to your office job, but you've got a prosthetic leg, or maybe you don't even have a prosthetic leg, i.e., medication and some therapeutic supports and strategies in place. So you don't even have a prosthetic leg, and you're limping along, and someone's like, "Whoa, that's a superpower! You must be so good at hopscotch, man!" And it's like,
mm.
society doesn't have too much in the way of hopscotch that's seen as beneficial.
I have a question, because this is really fascinating. And so I'll just name that, to my knowledge,
Mm.
I don't have ADD or ADHD, to my knowledge. Um, I have found, so I was at a conference last week, and it was a conference for entrepreneurs. And they said 80% of entrepreneurs are likely diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, but they called it the superpower. They called it the superpower of creativity.
Yep. Yep.
And so, as someone who does not, I am totally loving what you're saying around using that language with someone, that might feel like, oh, it doesn't feel like a superpower in me. In fact, that just creates more inner brain noise. What I found that was interesting was, so here's my question, right? Is it useful at all for someone who does not find themselves identifying with ADD or ADHD to view, how do I say it, to hold the lens that the creative side of someone that has ADD or ADHD, that is something to be celebrated? And the only way I'm saying that is
Mm.
because, right? And so from that perspective, a superpower. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think individuals that do not have ADD or ADHD spend so much time judging and criticizing, like you were saying, judging and criticizing children or individuals because they are not fitting into society or not fitting into the rules and expectations.
Mm.
Is that useful? Or you're like, Lisa, you're missing the whole point here, and remove it from the vocabulary?
No, no, not at all. And I think I understand what you're saying. In that that is I guess a verbalization and a confirmation of the strengths, right? The strengths. It's a validation of the strengths. And I completely understand what you're saying too in the context of entrepreneurs. I mean, also people with ADHD, the evidence indicates are 300% more likely to even start a business. And so, but I've had to be very careful too recently at conferences, and I'm so proud of the work that my wife and I have done over the years, both in education and in our business. And there's also been significant state and national awards for that work. And so you go to these places and see phenomenal people who are courageous and creative and doing these things. But we're the outliers. We're the survivors of, you know, and there's always that underlying trauma base, right? Well, even anecdotally for myself, in every single intake session with autism and ADHD, we look at those traumas and those attachment ruptures and these kind of things way back when. But I think, yeah, we should also understand that for every one of us who have, by virtue of maybe the support growing up, education, these kind of things, we managed to find a way to work, or if we were lucky enough to have the raw intellectual power, because everybody has different kind of levels of the intellect and so on and support, and to override it enough to survive within the system or go sideways and up as an entrepreneur. Then there's so many more people who couldn't make it as well, who were really suffering, who are suffering with that. So yeah, it's a hard one, because it's the people that you see there are very much those that were fortunate enough to kind of pop out there. Does that make sense a little bit?
I love this so much. I love this so much, and I love that you and I are both talking about it from right from your lived experience, and then
Mm,
my experience of not having this is not my lived experience.
mm.
And what you're supporting me, and I'm hoping other listeners here too, is to um think a little bit more, um I don't want to say it, like just because, like, I feel like you're helping my brain feel through the nuances of lived experience that's different than mine. But that's what that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yay. That's
Right.
great.
Which is like the whole point of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So great. So yes, I love that. I was, at a conference, and 80% of the people are identifying there, and they're calling it a superpower. And they're like, it's my superpower. But you're over here going, yeah, but you, even as a collective, don't represent the entire
Mm,
everyone that's diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. And it's like, right, right. That was
yeah.
just a certain sector. And so it's such a beautiful reminder. And it's a beautiful reminder for me of, Lisa, stay curious about different people's experiences, stay curious about everyone's unique experience with ADD and ADHD. So I hope, listeners, that you're hearing that also. So I'm super appreciating this conversation. So thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. And look, it's a learning journey for me too. Hey, like, post-diagnosis, post many years of curiosity, as a teacher and then working as a therapist with all these kids and teenagers, and there's so much of me going, huh. The game recognized game of like, that's what I do. I'll have to mention that to my supervisor, for years, and then kind of post-diagnosis, really unpacking it and so on. But anyway, it's a journey, right? And I am, we're all part of that process, and I'm not claiming any perfect expert knowledge of this, but merely from a lived experience perspective too. It's kind of, when we talk about, yes, a superpower, come on, man, you've got this, and that's amazing. And I do that a lot with my clients, but I also have to be kind of careful, because if I'm working from a bottom up perspective, right, and we're looking at the real neuroception of safety, the real hindbrain kind of
Yeah,
stuff. It's also like, dude, let's be scared together. Let's be
exactly.
frustrated together. I will be frustrated with you. Let's be
Exactly.
angry together
Mhm.
and slowly work our way up. And then once
Yeah.
we, coming more into limbic and then eventually into the prefrontal cortex, which with ADHD is, as we move into the amazing realms of the prefrontal cortex. And what's this? The right prefrontal cortex. I see many a neuron. And hey, guys, why are you not working? Hello? Hello? Oh, they don't seem to be responding. you
Well,
know,
I just caught another little nuance of what you shared, which is that um, the risk in even putting a positive spin, we'll just call it that, right? Is that the client, it's not really attuned to where the client is at, because the client's not coming into the office feeling like this is my superpower. The
mm,
client's coming into the office feeling like this is uh, this is challenging, this is hard, I don't fit in, this is really painful, right? This is,
yeah,
and so I love what you're saying, right? So the, even though I may hold the sort of this greater meta of both, and right, there's the pain and there's these parts of you that are like, that I want to celebrate, we're not there yet. That's what I'm hearing.
yeah,
Okay,
yep,
we're just not there yet. That we need to meet
yep.
them in the pain and
Oh,
work
yeah.
through the pain. That's really where we're at. Mhm.
Yeah, totally right. One
Yeah.
one of my clients at the moment has been through like literally you name it.
Mhm.
He's been through it. Arguably, out of any client I've worked with, just the most horrific trauma again and again and again, complex to the power of 10
Mhm.
trauma. Like just oh. And he is doing some phenomenal work, very physical, right? He's so kinetic. He's like a beautiful pinball. Ping, 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 ping. And in the past, hello mirror neurons, I would be pulled into that, and then we'd be pinging and away, and when I was working as a teacher. But having learned to resource and love and hug my little boy and keep him there and realize I need to go where he's going, channeling that in a positive way. And so getting him on my drum kit in the room and he, oh, the shame response, because he's trying to learn that basic drum beat that I'm supporting him with, that sort of boots and cats. Boots and cats. And anyway, to see the shame response hit him when he can't do it, which
Yeah.
is almost every time he tries to do something, really simple. And he just, the head goes back and he just woof, and it's straight to something else. It's the straight avoidance response. This feels uncomfortable. I can't do this. And I'm like, oh, it's so uncomfortable and so frustrating. And oh man, I'm with you. And just constantly verbalizing.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I don't talk the whole time in sessions, I promise.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
constantly, yeah,
in
sorry.
energetic play therapy, we call it the setup, right? That we are, right,
Yes.
we're invited into their world, and so we will feel, if we're attuned, we will feel the frustration alongside them.
Yeah,
We will feel the sense of not good enough, right, alongside them, and
that's exactly it.
that's what we're
Yeah.
co-regulating through.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. So verbalizing that frustration, and yeah, we're frustrated together and it's so annoying, and but you got this, man. Let's go. We'll do one more time, and just little things like that. And then before you know it, he spent 20 minutes, a session, 20 minutes, 30 minutes working on this one thing, just building those beautiful little neuron connections, blah, 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 like that. And I have a little, a few neuron plushies, and just showing them. I'm like, dude, every time you do, look, they're connecting. And it's just so amazing to see him do that despite that real massive shame and avoidance response,
Mhm.
and I can see how hard it is for him in school, because everything is a confirmation of his internal working model of self. I can't do it. My teachers don't like me. My friends don't trust me. Um, I'm not safe. I can't learn all these things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think having felt that, I guess, as a neurodivergent professional,
Mhm.
and still feeling it, right? But my RSD, I guess, similar to my amygdala, what it feels like, has gone from a great whopping, German Shepherd, like with very little control, um, is really coming down to a very cute little, maybe a little cute miniature Groodle or something like that, you know, that I can hold and is much safer and much smaller. Um, yeah. So I feel that that really helps when I work with those kids, and I work predominantly with males, you know,
Mhm.
um, with these challenges. I still have some female clients, but predominantly males.
So let's go into that a little bit because I think that's really helpful for clinicians to hear more about. So, right. So here you are working with a male,
Mm,
you're a male.
yep.
Yep. And so you're looking in a mirror,
Mm,
right? And,
totally.
and so what I'm hearing you say is that you've learned to hold a part of yourself
Yeah.
in all the activation around the not feeling good enough and all of that.
Yep.
How did you do that? What's been that process, or what do you do? And I'm saying that because whether it's ADD or ADHD, clinicians, we're in sessions with our mirrors,
Oh yeah.
right? And we identify with the mirrors in front of us. And so how do we work with those parts?
Yeah. I think to get to that point, it's really, I often talk about accepting your scars and stars, you
Mm,
know? So really holding yourself through that. And obviously that's been a big journey with therapists over the years. And putting in the hard work and really staring into those scary, opening Pandora's box and then
mhm,
tipping it all out on the floor and going, gosh, that looks like a terribly deep swamp.
mhm,
And then starting to step in and kind of maybe titrate in or swing in and swing out,
mhm,
dipping one's toe, and
mhm,
then realizing, oh wait, hang on, oh, oh, I thought it was way deeper than this, and actually consciously taking time to wade and even swim in the swamp of sadness for a bit and feel it and let it pass through and pop out and go, oh, ugh, that was yuck. Well, I'll see you next time, Swamp. And now that enables me to, you know, in sessions really see it and experience it with them and go where they need to go. Um, and then yeah, again, it's really enabled me to do more of that bottom up sort of work with these clients and with these kids who everything's so surface level in the systems that they're within. So yeah, being able to work through anger and rage with you know, training lightsabers or punch pads and doing lots of work like that, and then before you know it, way more eye contact, way more sort of emotional affect, and you know, the voice register drops. You can hear all these changes as they kind of just sink into more of a, I guess, parasympathetic mode, right? And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, it's like when this happened, and they start
mhm.
to reflect and share. And yeah, it's, I'm so lucky to be, I'm so grateful to be doing the work that I'm doing with these kids. I just, it's amazing and very humbling and very challenging at times, you know, when you get the big trauma splash.
So I have two questions that just popped into my mind from what you just shared. The
Mm,
first is for our listeners that are therapists that identify as neurodivergent in some way. What what message do you have for them specifically? What do
be
you?
kind to yourself.
Mhm,
So many have such high anxiety and second guess every interaction. Um, yeah, and often lock up on those, and sort of they'll be fixated on something and thinking about something, and then, oh no, I haven't done session notes, oh I've got my next client, and then, oh I've got the, you know, it can be so challenging. So for you beautiful people out there, give yourself a bit of a hug, give yourself a butterfly hug, hey, because you're doing amazing work. And yes, compliance, and yes, absolutely, all of these important things that are a part of what we do. But obviously, the most important part is that you are there, present, in relationship with your client, going where your client needs to go in the playroom. That's it.
mhm.
And good Lord, if you're doing that, oh, shut up and take my respect. Ah,
Mhm.
And you should respect yourself as well. Just be kind to yourself.
Mhm. Love it. And for the listeners that do not identify as neurodivergent, what do you want them to really understand about the neurodivergent experience?
That's such a good question, Lisa. Gosh. I would say the same sort of a thing in terms of, perhaps always be kind to yourself, regardless. Hello, human experience. But for those, yeah, who may not have those particular challenges, be curious. Be more like Lisa. You know, ask questions. Be open to uh, changing your mind or perspective. Be curious. I think in our hello, electric telephone, in our algorithmically split binary viewpoints that so many of us have nowadays. It's this political party or this political party or this identity or that idea. Just be kind and be curious and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mhm.
Because I think when discourse feels like it can't, when somebody can't even ask a question like, is it, are you okay to talk about ADHD? Like, I noticed that you said something about being
Mhm.
diagnosed. Like, is it frustrating for you? Or like, what do you find, sit around and have that discourse because often
Mhm.
that person feels very alone and anybody, regardless of, you know, neurodivergence or not, um, it's another way to connect, right? It's just another attachment. So ask questions, be curious,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah. And check out your perceptions like I did at the beginning. I came in hearing one thing and you helped me understand from a different angle, different perspective, and that was beautiful. So yeah, it's beautiful. Can can we go into the playroom? Take
Oh,
a couple minutes
yeah.
to the playroom.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, you've given some just examples just in in your stories here about
Hmm.
how you work. What do you think is most useful, most helpful, um, from a therapeutic perspective? Like,
In terms of an approach or
yeah,
like
like if you were going to give a class on, using play therapy with ADD or ADHD, right? If you were going to teach a class on it, and you had a whole group of practitioners, full range of backgrounds, identification. If you're like, look, you just need like these three things or these five things, or maybe it's this one thing. I don't know. Just I'd love to hear your perspective, your approach. I'll tell you where the question's coming from. There's some literature where it's very cognitive, right? It's a very cognitive,
hmm,
very cognitive approach. There's other that's very not even kind of more of a behavioral kind of an approach, right?
hmm,
Where we're doing like sort of, yeah, more of a behavior thing. There's a more trauma centered, approach, and more even like non-directive kind of approach. Maybe
yes.
maybe you're in the category of it's a hybrid. Whatever the heck is needed. Do you tend to work just individually or do you tend to work with the family? I would just love to hear how you think about and how you tend to work with kids in the playroom.
Okay,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, well, listen up, please, class. Please put your mobile devices away and switch them to silent, because look out, here comes
Exactly.
the
I told
ex-teacher.
everyone have a piece of paper and a pen ready.
And I will check. I will find a way. um, uh, my amazing wife and CEO, Cian, frequentently mentions this when she's supported, because she's a supervisor as well, when she's supporting our staff at the clinic. Now, she got this from I believe her supervisor, whose name escapes me. I do apologize, but it's beautiful, and it's the advice is take all your qualifications, all your experience, everything that's led up to that moment. And as soon as you walk into the playroom, you leave it all at the door and you are just present and with your client. How does that work out for me? Yeah, I guess you could say a hybrid model, as it were. So, it's for some of the younger ones working in that really client-centered, kind of unstructured, but as that relationship builds, you're adding more things around their particular challenges. You might be adding certain elements because I'm quite frank with the kids once they've been working with me for a while, regardless of age. I want them to be uncomfortable. There's no growth without discomfort.
I
I
love that
don't
you said that so much. Will you say that one more time? I love that you just said that.
that there's no growth without discomfort,
Well, but
or
I
they
think,
want them to be uncomfortable.
well, because I think that in our field we've confused safety with comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Yes.
so right there's so much, everything has to be safe, 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 safe. But I think a
Yep.
lot of play therapists and therapists mean, well, that means that there can't be challenge in the room, and that it needs, right, that we can't challenge our clients, and it needs to feel really comfy and cozy, and
Yeah.
like it's actually both, right? We need
Yep.
we need that sense of safety, but they also, like you just said, there needs to be an element um of uncomfortability going on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're not stretching.
Yep.
Mhm.
Totally. And look, I do quick segue. I'll come back to the playroom, I
Yeah,
promise, Lisa. But quick segue. The dads chat groups that
yeah.
I'm running down here in Melbourne. I'm so proud of these guys. Each week there's like 40 dads coming out on a Wednesday night. I've got them
Mhm.
going with Play-Doh. We're doing bubbles. We're throwing paper airplanes. Doing lots and lots of, there's a lot of therapy activities that I do with them, right? Lots of beautiful attachment things, and lots of real talk, and sneakily, much like we make for our children. Hey, children, it's time to have some sausage rolls. It's just beautiful mince. That's all it is, with broccoli and some carrots, and then grind it up. And yes. So there's that brain and behavior education as well going on. Um, and so, working in that hands-on creative way, I'm always saying to them, we've got to get uncomfortable though. This is going to be awkward, guys, because you guys hardly know me. And there's going to be some weird moments because that's where we need to be to learn. And so anything, if we take that back to working in the playroom with the client, it could be a breath hold competition because that's really uncomfortable. And you can reflect on, and I really felt like, and then Tony said, look, I can see how uncomfortable that is. Just count to 5 really slowly, and we can see if we can beat your record from before. And giving them sort of little simple, measurable markers of success, which particularly with our ADHD is, they experience the confirmation bias of failure is everywhere for them
Yeah.
you know. So I want them to be uncomfortable. I want them to, in a case, sometimes I use in my room, it's an amalgamation of my 20 years of working with kids and teenagers, right? So in the room is, sort of a Lego area. There's the play toys, there's the sand tray, there's VR, which is out of sight but usable. If it's part of the plan with the child and all that sort of stuff, and very curated things within VR to for them to engage with. It might be for a kid with no safety, it could be a mindfulness place, or a kid that they have complete control over night and day and do all these kind of things. It might be an environment for a child who just because of their perfection and the anxiety sort of complex, I can't engage with it because I might stuff it up. I'm going to control the outcome by choosing no, and all these PDA challenges. Um, so we start doing like I use one called the climb too, which is they're climbing this rock face and whoa, and then look down, whoa, how'd that feel? Keep going. Which way do you get to choose? And as it scales in complexity and challenge, the next week, you know what? You're ready for the next level, man. Let's get the wrist weights on. And these kids are sweating at the end of it. But the accomplishment of being physically uncomfortable obviously directly links to their mental resilience, right? And their self-belief. Um, so I'm big on that. I worry personally, I worry about um, enabling my clients, and I don't want them because in what world is any person able to be at the top of Maslow's hierarchy or Bloom's taxonomy? There's that teacher coming out again. Oh no. who hasn't experienced challenge and who hasn't gone through safety
Yeah.
and connection and relationship to a point where they are the master of their ship and they can steer the storms with
Mhm.
their crew or without.
Yeah.
And so that's why they need to be uncomfortable.
Okay, I've got a question that just popped into my head with that one. Okay, so when you are mm, choosing something or supporting them in doing an activity to work on
Mm,
the to work on this it's a little bit more mastery, right? And to work on a little bit more sort of resiliency through challenge.
yep.
You um because I just heard you say something interesting just around the challenge. Do you pick something actually before before I ask this question, I want to give you context for why I'm asking this question. Okay.
Sure.
It has been my experience, and then please correct me if this is just another, Lisa, this is another misunderstanding that you have. The children that I've worked with that have ADD or ADHD tend to have an area of life that's really, really interesting to them.
Mhm.
Like really, really interesting. Like hyper focused in that particular area. And it seems that when they're engaged in that area, they have the highest probability of being in their prefrontal cortex. And right. And so, and that there's this beautiful sort of connection in there with this thing that is like high interest, and then what's happening in their brain. So
Mm.
with that, and so first you can tell me if that's an accurate understanding or not. But so with that, do you then create things in the playroom that are not connected to that? Because that so that other parts of of them get to move through challenge, if that's an area. Do you get where my question is?
Yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
think so. And correct me if I'm going off on the wrong
Yeah, let's
tangent here,
unpack.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Because initially the first few sessions, 100%, right? You know, that rapport, connection, attachment, and attunement, bang, 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 that's what we want. And I would argue too that it becomes almost a whole brain thing because I notice that their breathing slows down.
Mhm.
And, you know, when say a child, like, because we run pro-social groups at the clinic as well.
Mhm.
And I run one called Building Blocks, Lego group. And
Mhm.
these kids, like, and you're trying so hard to do like connection group, you know, theory of mind activities with building on a Lego plate and then passing it to the next person. And then that can be so triggering for them, but it's very powerful. Anyway, but when they're doing it, they slow down and you can hear them breathing and they're just really, yeah, so focused.
Mhm.
And like I said, very activated in the prefrontal cortex as well. Um, so I would start with that. And then I would find ways to connect and get them to follow or flow to something similar. So
Mhm.
almost, you know, scaffold to
I got it. So
these
not
parts where we
quite,
can,
yeah, not quite in line with their high interest, but maybe slightly to the side of a high interest.
yes,
So we're
yeah.
trying to expand the interest out a little bit. Is that, am I thinking about
Totally,
it?
totally. And when it comes to say like often our autistic kids in the playroom, you know, and they'll be like, because in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's really important to, I mean, I've been taught to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards, let me tell you. I've also forgotten because thanks ADHD. But um that focus on it. It could be a 45-minute session, all verbalization about Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're like, oh gosh, this isn't therapeutic. Here's my imposter syndrome. Door opens. Tony, how can you charge for this? This is not therapeutic. Close door. So, finding ways to redirect, or even in the case of some of them, be quite explicit and say, oh, I really want to hear about this. How about you choose the next two things you really want to tell me about Yu-Gi-Oh
Yeah,
before we start
yeah,
doing that thing you loved doing last week? You know,
yeah.
little redirects and things. So validate that 100%, but then, you know, like you said, the sort of hyper-focus adjacent activities.
Exactly. Start moving out. I think that
Yeah.
is so key for clinicians to get, because I think sometimes clinicians, when they're trying to make a decision about activities, um, uh, uh, sometimes jump into an area or choose an activity that maybe is too far away from what's meaningful for the child, or like there's too much of a gap. And if
Yep.
we're talking around building a skill level, it's sort of like start with where they are and then let that slowly grow. So I tend to think of it, and again, tell me if I'm thinking about this correctly. I tend to think of it as, right, we start with where they're comfortable, and then to establish the rapport and that message of like, you totally get to be you in here, like you are so loved and appreciated for who you are and your interests and all of that. And then we slowly start to bring in a little bit of challenge, but then we got to regulate through that until that gets into
Yep.
the window of tolerance. And
Yep.
but I'm not moving forward until that one now has registered in the window of tolerance. And once that's in the window of tolerance, then we stretch it just a little bit more, and now we're back to uncomfortable again, and this is like really hard, and now we're back to can't do it, and but then you know what, we're going to co-regulate through that until that's in their window of tolerance, and then we're going to stretch it just a little bit more. And am I on the right track?
Totally right. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So we are, I guess if you go back through the three levels of how we operate, I think at any
Yeah.
given moment as a play therapist, and I think as any good therapist in general,
Yeah.
um, everything's left outside of the room. You're deeply present with that child, teenager, or if you're doing certain work, with an adult as well. Um, but you've also got there's that meta level above, which is like, okay, where to from here? Pivot, drop, don't need this, go this
Mhm,
way, and so on and so
mhm,
forth. And then there's the total level at the top, which is like, well, how does this pertain to, threat-based play and what could be going on a cognitive level for my client,
mhm,
So, and then that person's gonna that part of you is gonna write the notes at the end of it. But I think as it pertains to being in relationship, we leverage our relationship with our clients to say it's okay, come with me. We can go backwards and forwards into challenge, like you just so beautifully did, Lisa. And gradually, or if we do it this way in terms of the model, right, gradually grow that window of tolerance,
yeah.
which is commensurate with their self-belief,
Yeah.
with their RSD, with their behaviors, their amygdala going to a
Yep.
little bit more,
Yep.
as we start to grow their belief in their wise owl at the front. So
Yeah.
yeah, super important. And I think maybe as an ADHD working in this space, the part of me that would go, well, how does this pertain to this particular attachment model or this particular therapeutic approach or whatever, is literally not even outside the door. I don't know where it is. I'll have to go through my Google Drive and find that file of maybe checking myself or self-doubt, because that's the real right prefrontal cortex. Kind of the neurons are there, they're on the scaffolding, they're ready to do work, but they're like, I don't know, there's some work dispute. They're like, no, it's not working for me. Um, so I feel it's easier for me to just go with it.
Mhm,
And then also, I think the advantage, I'm not going to go with it. And I think maybe this has come from being a teacher for so many years. Just go with it, but be just as prepared to drop it
mhm,
as soon as you feel it somatically from that client,
mhm,
that it's not working. I tried something, I tested it out the other week with a client who had experienced major trauma around their neck and a
mhm,
real
mhm,
serious life and death trauma when they were a baby. And it had come up in early sessions. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing that this stuff's coming up. And I reflected what they were communicating. Not, it wasn't conscious. They weren't talking about the event, but they were mentioning these things. And anyway, so I thought, well, I'll just jump in, and we were doing some drum warm-ups, and with a little tongue drum, and it's almost like the Simon Says game. And so they're in control, beautiful for power and control dynamics, and they go ding ding, and then you go, ooh, I'll see if I can remember those. Ding ding, trying to hit the right notes with the mallet, and then they add a new one each time. And it's a
mhm,
great way for me to figure out what their working memory is on that day and get a ballpark, you know.
mhm, mhm,
Anyway, so we're doing that, and I thought, oh, and I'll do the djembe at the same time. And he's, oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's good. And I was doing the djembe and said, do you know what I like to do with the drum? Is I like to touch my neck and went for my carotid artery, and I was like, I like to make it the sound of my heartbeat, and then I know if I'm going fast or slow, if I'm calm or stressed or happy or sad or a mixture of those things. And he's like, I don't measure my heart rate that way. He did not want to touch his neck at all.
Yeah,
And I went, no worries, pivoted, we went to something else. So
exactly.
it's just trying to go, you try this, didn't work, go that way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Long-winded. I hope that made sense.
Well, completely, because it's just that you're titrating them towards the experience, but attuned enough to know when to back off, when to lean in,
Yeah.
which from my perspective requires us to be really attuned to ourselves too, and follow our own sort of intuition in the process. And um I often tell students that the thing that's gonna mess us up the most in the playroom is thinking about what we think we should be doing in the playroom,
Oh, yeah. Right?
right? And our belief about what we should be doing, and the belief
Mm.
how it's supposed to be, and we're supposed to do it that way because Tony, we read it in that book, you know,
Ugh.
right? That
Get
book,
out
that,
of your
that book,
prefrontal cortex into
right?
your limbic system.
Exactly, right? Or because that one teacher said that when the child plays with this, this is how you're supposed to do it. Or
Yeah.
that supervisor said that this is when you're supposed to set the boundary. And what I just find so beautiful about this, and this sort of this message across the board that I keep hearing you say, is like, it's an unfolding. No, like get in there, be present with the child, you know, titrate titrate towards, and be attuned and back off, and we're working on helping these children love themselves, and strengthen their capacity, and straighten their, give them a different internal working dialogue about the
Yeah.
possibility that lies within them. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
totally. And I love that, Lisa. That's so beautiful. And you know, play is presence in motion,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
so when you go, oh, it's this modality and I should be doing this, or I should be titrating into exposure stuff for
mhm.
this OCD stuff that's happening. I should be doing more CBT approaches to my, just breathe it out.
Exactly,
Just be with them.
exactly.
Because I mean, gosh, I had a session with one of my beautiful boys the other day who has so many, complex challenges wrapped up with, and he's so intelligent and so articulate, but he has a lot of real struggles. And it just isn't sleeping. And so I'm just like, dude, don't even, this is all Maslow's hierarchy, man. We're down the bottom. Like, let's just be there. Let's just be
Yeah,
tired.
yeah,
And so we sat there and I did not talk for like 15, 20 minutes in the session. Just there, just sad and tired and just really feeling all of those things that he was feeling.
yeah.
And he got up. And he just got up and he saw the lightsabers that were, as you do, over in the corner of the room. And past the 3D printers and all the nerdy stuff on the shelves. Oh yeah. And and he picks it up and he goes, one of the best things I've ever done was joining a fencing club. And I just loved it in primary school. And I should do it again. And I was like, oh, show me. And so we cranked up the lightsabers, turned the lights out in the room. And before you know it, the remainder of the session was I was the student, he was the teacher, everything about him was alive and happy and strong and confident. And he legit scared me. I was like, oh, dude, like I was reflecting, like, this is really scary. And he didn't hurt me, but he tagged me every time with his strength and and I don't think that would have come out had I tried to go, I need to try this approach to get this teenager
Right.
to engage with me.
Yeah,
I just had to
yeah,
be with him and just present and just let it pass through him.
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or forcing a conversation, or we need to talk about this, or we're supposed to be
Yeah.
working on this goal, or your parents said that we need to talk about what happened at school this past week. Or, or what
Yes.
your, or whatever it is. Oh, Tony,
Totally right.
this is so good. Okay, so Tony, for our listeners that want to find you, that want to hear more, where can we direct them?
Oh, so yeah, if anybody wants to see the work we're doing, check out buildingbetterbrains.com.au. And if you just type Building Better Brains into Instagram or Facebook as well. I've started off my own Instagram just recently, and I'd love for people to check it out, particularly those who are neurodivergent parents and dads as well. Um, I just adore and I'm so grateful to be running these dads groups, and I want to expand it, and I want to train dads because, gee, there's so many dads out there who are feeling so lonely and so disempowered and so exhausted. I mean, this is a societal thing; it goes beyond gender, but I'm so stoked to be working with these guys and far out. They are amazing and brave and vulnerable. And so being able to speak about challenges around parenting, I mean, gosh, the advantage of having less of a handbrake when it comes to, yeah, I'm going to go with this for my client is a double-edged sword because when a strong emotion comes up, right?
Yeah.
Bang, it's come out and it's done damage.
Yeah.
And far out, the effect that that's had on
Mm.
my marriage, on previous relationships, on my children, has led me, and again, far out, still a work in progress, but has led me to do so much reflecting and work, and that's I think what I really adore doing too is supporting dads. So if you want to check out Neurodad Life, and just go Tony Vallance, on Instagram, or Neurodad Life. Just started that up. I'd love for you to be on board with that journey, and yeah, just working really to support and understand dads and how that pertains to how we parent, how we connect, and how we play.
Amazing. So good, Tony. Tony, this has been just um a, such a wonderful conversation. I could literally just keep talking. Just I could I could keep I'm learning so much. I'm reflecting. I'm loving, this time with you. I just thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your questions and your presence. And yeah, I really appreciate, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Um, Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're up to, um, I'm going to use Tony's words. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, be kind to yourself. Um, Take care of yourself. You're the most important toy in the playroom. Until next time.
Amen.